So I was late this morning because I almost forgot my treasure. I was halfway here, and God called me in the form of the mattress salesman, and it was enough to remind me that I'd forgotten it. So, when my grandfather, on my mother's side, John, some of whom you may know,
Yes, I do.
He died when I was about 8 years old. And I remember him. I loved him well, but I didn't really get a chance to know him very well because he died when I was so young. And I would say probably the same goes for him. He didn't get a chance to know me real well. And when he died, he didn't have a formal will, but he left some things to different people. And my brother and I, at that point, were his only grandchildren by blood. Since he's died, my aunts and uncles have had kids, and there are lots of other grandkids. But at the time, it was just me and my brother Ben. And he left us each one thing, and very suited, now that I reflect on it, to our age and our gender for a man of his generation. He left me a calendar that had pinup girls in it. So I'm thinking in my head, right? Fancy clothes, fancy girls. Why wouldn't an 8-year-old girl like that? And then he left my brother something else. The thing that he left my brother I brought with us today. Because my brother left it behind in my parents' house when he moved out. And I was so jealous at what he left my brother, which you'll probably understand very shortly. He left my brother a sword. I don't know the legacy of the sword. There was no story with it. But it's a pretty awesome sword. It has drawings on it, if you look real close. There's somebody who looks kind of like a crusader here, with an image of the Trinity shining down on him. And he's holding a sword. And then if you go further down, there's another fellow who's kind of like a bishop or something. He's got a cross on his chest, and he's holding like a stick in his hand. Not a sword. I don't think that's a sword. I think it's something holy. And then, of course, there's a cross here and a cross at the top. And you can tell that it's old. It's ivory handles kind of get chipped. And obviously it's a little tarnished. And if you take the sword out, yes, there's actually markings on the sword itself, too. Markings of the cross, also of a knight. You see a knight there. A little plumed helm. And there's what I think is a shell at the bottom. See that, Janice? I think that's a shell to remind us of our baptism. Well, I was so jealous because at the time, I was just starting to read adventure fantasy books, which of course prominently feature heroes with swords. And I think I may have even asked my brother if he wanted to trade. Of course he did not. Now, of course, the treasure is not so much the sword, but the memory of my grandfather, who was a deeply loving man, very affectionate, and very important in my family. And this is just something to remember him by. But certainly, dramatic something to remember him by. And I'll be keeping it very well for my brother until he might happen to realize that he doesn't have it. Until that point, it will be with me. So that was the first treasure that came to mind when I was thinking of family treasures. The second treasure I couldn't bring with me, one, because it was too big, and second, we don't have it anymore. And the second treasure, I brought a picture for you. So Steve, if you could bring that up. Second treasure was a piano that my grandmother gave to me. So here you can see my Aunt Susan on the left there, and my father, Steve, looking very cute on the right. And this must have been in my grandparents' house in Dublin, just after they moved to Pennsylvania, because they lived in Florida and also also in Kansas before moving to Pennsylvania when my dad was about this age. But a lovely little spinet piano, and it always rested at my grandparents' house, and whenever we would go to visit, I was drawn to this piano, and I would play away on its keys, even though I had no idea how to play a piano. And so my grandmother would help me out by giving me some drills so that my songs on the piano were a little more tolerable to the ear. But that kind of backfired, because then I would practice and practice and practice those drills until people were sick of hearing them. And when I was about 8 years old, we moved to a new house, and it was a little bigger, and it was big enough to have a piano. And so my grandmother, she gave us this piano. So if you go to the next picture, here is a young Pastor Cat looking very happy, as you can tell. I think somebody forced me to take this picture. It was the only one I could find of me and the piano. But it was the first piano that I practiced on and took lessons on, and then later as I increased my skill, we bought another piano, because this was, as a spinet, it doesn't have the full length of the keyboard. So we bought another piano that was a full-length keyboard. But the real treasure, of course, not so much the piano, but the legacy of music that it left to me. A legacy that's very deep and rich in my father's family, singing and instrument playing. So these were two treasures, one that I could bring and share with you, and this other one that's no longer in my possession, but which still leaves its legacy behind in my life of music. I wonder if you can think of any treasures from your own family. Does anything come to mind for you? Things that were given to you or left to you? Your great-grandfather's fiddle, so another instrument. And what was significant about that for you? Mm-hmm. You used it to earn money playing at square dances, and now it's yours. So it was passed on to somebody else before it came to you. Yeah. So it has a real legacy in your family. Absolutely. Another musical legacy. Yeah.
My mom, she always made her filling for Thanksgiving this past Tuesday.
Uh-huh.
And whenever they come up for Thanksgiving, I always eat some fish and some boxes.
Yeah, so Sue has a dish. My Nana, the same one with the piano, she also has a lot of dishes from her own mother, and some of them from her grandmother. So Sue has a dish from your mom, right, that she uses on Thanksgiving to make filling. Yep, Pennsylvania Dutch filling. And that's a way of her mom being present with all the family at this holiday. Yeah, absolutely. Anybody else think of a treasure? Rosie? Oh, nice. Oh, how special. So her mom's gold locket that your father gave to her when they married, and it has a picture of both of her parents inside. And Rosie has that as a reminder of her parents, their love for her. Yeah, Marie.
My grandmother, my Italian grandmother, left me her baking board.
Baking board, what is that?
Well, we made homemade pasta.
Oh,
Often
wow.
on a Sunday morning, or Saturday actually we made it, and then everybody went to church and gathered at Grammy's for pasta. And it had a crank thing.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
And you could make gnocchi, you could make, we had lines into her kitchen.
Yeah, to dry the pasta.
And I used to call it the spaghetti forest.
Oh, wow.
That was my favorite thing that I got from my family.
And you inherited this baking board from her.
Yes, I did.
Wow. So Marie's grandmother, on her Italian side, the Italian side of her family, gave her a baking board. This is what they would use to make pasta on Saturday.
Yeah, usually.
And then they would have it on Sunday when family would come to eat. Yeah, that's really special. So we hear things, food, music,
It's in the bowl.
what do you call it, jewelry, right? All these things, little, things big, that remind us of our family, and most of all, remind us of the love that our family has for us, right? A reminder of that love. So in our scripture today, We hear in the first reading that Ed read for us about Timothy. Paul is writing to Timothy, who's his co-worker in the gospel. Both of them had worked together in spreading the word about the gospel and founding congregations in Paul's travel. And they since parted ways, and Paul is writing to Timothy to encourage him. And he writes about his family. He writes about his grandmother, Lois, and his mother, Eunice, both of whom were women of faith before Timothy was. And this legacy of faith that they left. Now, this legacy of faith is a wonderful family treasure that gets passed down in the Christian family. It's a treasure that we receive in baptism, and it's a treasure that's powerful. We hear in our gospel. Just a small amount of this treasure, just a tiny share, can do incredible things. And of course, this faith isn't just about belief or relationship with God. It's about the way we live our life. And it's a way of living our life that reflects that forgiveness and love and generosity that we first received. A way of living our life that then passes on all of those things to others. On Monday, this past week, we were talking about the decision that our denomination made to declare themselves a sanctuary church body, which caused a fair amount of concern here at St. John's. And I heard from all of you in that conversation about the legacy of St. John's, about the legacy of helping those who are in need, and how much you care about carrying that legacy forward. I also heard about a legacy that you want to leave for the church, which is you want the church to be a place where people from all kinds of backgrounds can come together and be together in unity, where political disagreements aren't a cause for somebody to feel like they're not welcome in this space. And so then we were asking ourselves, what are we going to do about the fact that our parent denomination has taken on this word, which should by rights belong to the church. We are sitting in a space called a sanctuary, but which unfortunately today has been co-opted by the political world to represent certain policies that a particular group have adopted. What are we to do, we asked. One of the options was to speak, to talk back to the denomination and share our concerns about how this might create division in the church. And to share with the wider church how we're still passionate about caring for others, but we just think that we ought to go about it in a different way. And some people were skeptical of this option. Who, after all, would listen to a small, tiny congregation? Right? ELCA is a huge organization. Who's going to listen to us? I just want to encourage you to look back at this treasure that we've received of faith and reflect on the gospel. Just a small seed, tiny little seed of faith, Jesus says, is enough that you can speak and say to that mulberry tree, be uprooted and planted in the sea, and it will obey you. Our faith doesn't have to be huge. It just has to be present. And it will be enough that we can speak and we will be heard. That faith is a treasure that we want to guard, as Paul encourages us to. And we want to guard it not by keeping it to ourselves, but by passing it on and sharing it. And that's part of our work as the people of God. Guarding that treasure by passing it on. So let us give thanks that we are fortunate enough to receive that treasure, the treasure of faith. And let us then in our work and in our lives pass that faith on to others. Amen.